Imagine walking past a construction site every morning. On the first day, there's almost nothing to see. A few tools, some dirt, maybe the outline of a foundation. And then a week later, the walls begin to rise. And then months later, a building stands where empty ground once stood. And no single day looked extraordinary, but every day mattered. I think character is built the same way. We often expect transformation to happen in some dramatic moment, or like some people say, overnight. One big decision, one breakthrough, one life changing event. But most lasting change is a lot quieter. It's built every time you do what you said you would do, every time you finish what you started, every time you continue after the excitement fades. Anyone can make a promise. Follow through is the evidence that the promise became part of who you are. Here's something that I've realized. People often admire consistency from a distance. They see someone who follows through and they assume that they must be naturally disciplined. I don't think that's usually true. I think they've simply learned something most people never do. Following through is a decision you make over and over again, not once, every morning, every afternoon, every ordinary moment when quitting would have been easier. And builders understand this. They don't arrive at a construction site expecting to finish the entire building before lunch. They just ask, what's the next brick? That's an important question because overwhelm usually comes from staring at a finished building. Momentum comes from laying the next brick. I found that many people don't stop because the work is impossible. They stop because they're measuring themselves against the completed vision instead of the next faithful step. That can be discouraging. And discouragement has ended more dreams than difficulty ever has. That's why follow through isn't about finishing everything today. It's about refusing to abandon today's brick. I've also realized something else. Every unfinished commitment quietly competes for your attention. It whispers. It says, you said that you would. And over time, those unfinished promises become mental clutter. It's not because they were impossible, because they were unresolved. Every completed commitment does the opposite. It creates closure. It frees attention. It teaches your mind that this is someone who finishes. That's an incredibly powerful identity. And that's not because it impresses other people. It's because it changes your expectations of yourself. And eventually you stop hoping that you follow through. You begin expecting it. And that's when consistency starts feeling less like effort and more like character. One completed task, one honored commitment, one brick at a time. That's how builders eventually create something remarkable. Not through extraordinary days, but through ordinary ones that they refuse to waste. There's another reason follow through matters. It changes the story that you tell yourself. We all carry this internal narrative. Some people, they quietly believe, I never finish what I start. Meanwhile, others people believe that I can be counted on. Those stories aren't created by positive thinking. They're created by repeated evidence. Every action becomes another piece of proof. If you repeatedly leave projects unfinished, your mind begins expecting unfinished projects. If you repeatedly complete what you begin, your mind begins expecting completion. That's why identity is always being shaped. Whether you realize it or not, I've come to believe that confidence isn't built by telling yourself you're capable. It's built by giving yourself a reason to believe it. And one of the strongest reasons is simple. You kept your word again and again and again. Think about the builder. No one congratulates the builder for carrying one brick. The power comes from carrying the next one and then the next. And eventually people stop noticing the bricks and they notice the building. And life works the same way. Most people won't remember the countless ordinary choices that you made. They'll notice the character those choices produced. And that's why follow through isn't really about today's task, it's about tomorrow's identity. And I've also noticed that people who consistently follow through don't chase perfection, they chase completion. Perfection always delays action, completion creates momentum. A finished draft teaches you more than a perfect draft that never exists. A completed workout is more valuable than the perfect workout that you postponed. An honest conversation is better than the flawless conversation that never happens. Follow through values progress over performance because builders understand something that perfectionists often forget. A building isn't finished because every brick was perfect. It's finished because someone kept laying bricks. And that's the mindset we're trying to build. Not everything has to be perfect, but I finish what matters. That one belief has the power to change almost every area of your life because every completed commitment strengthens your confidence to begin the next one. And over time, follow through stops being something that you do and it becomes someone you are. So, what does follow through look like in everyday life? It begins with one simple habit. Before you start something new, finish something that you've already started. Our minds love beginnings, new ideas, new projects, fresh opportunities. I know that's true for me. There's excitement in starting, but your character is shaped in finishing. I found it helpful to ask one question before moving on to the next task. What deserves to be completed first? Not what's newest, not what's most exciting, what's most important. What deserves to be completed first? That small question protects you from becoming someone who collects beginnings instead of creating results. And there's another practice that's quietly changed the way I work. When I finish something meaningful, I pause for just a moment, not to celebrate perfection, but to acknowledge completion. Because every completed commitment is another piece of evidence. Evidence that I can depend on myself. Those moments matter. They strengthen your identity far more than you realize. That's today's daily focus. Choose one meaningful task you've already begun. Finish it before starting something new. Don't worry about finishing everything. Finish one thing well. Experience the confidence that comes from completion, not because the task was extraordinary, but because your follow through was. Think back to the builder. The building didn't appear because someone dreamed about it. It didn't appear because someone planned it. It appeared because someone kept showing up, brick after brick, day after day, long after the excitement disappeared. Your life is being built the same way. Every finished conversation, every honored commitment, every project you complete, every promise you keep, they're all becoming part of something much larger than today's accomplishment. They're becoming the evidence of your character. So tomorrow, don't look for a dramatic breakthrough. Look for the next brick. Finish one meaningful thing, then another, and then another. Because extraordinary lives are rarely built through extraordinary moments. They're built through ordinary acts of faithful follow through, repeated over time. And one day you look back and you realize something remarkable. You didn't simply accomplish more, you became someone who could be counted on by others, by your purpose, and most importantly, by yourself. And remember, character is built every time you finish what your values started. Imagine looking back on your life years from now. People may remember the goals you achieved, the work you completed, the impact you made. But underneath all of those accomplishments will be something even more important: the person who kept showing up, because that's who really built the life. Not the version of you that felt inspired once, the version of you that kept laying bricks long after inspiration faded. That's what this phase has been preparing you for. You made a commitment. You learned to honor it. You chose faithfulness over feelings. Now you've discovered what all of those lessons were building toward: follow through. Because commitment without follow through remains an intention. Faithfulness without follow through remains a desire. Follow through is where your values become visible. It's where the life you imagine begins taking shape in the real world. That's why I believe reliability is one of the quietest forms of greatness. Reliable people don't usually attract attention. They don't need to. Their lives speak for them. Their words carry weight. Their actions match their values. Their consistency becomes their reputation. And that reputation begins with the promises they first learned to keep with themselves. So tomorrow, don't worry about finishing everything. Finish the next meaningful thing. Lay the next brick. Keep the next promise. Honor the next commitment. Because that's how builders think. They don't become discouraged by the size of the building. They stay focused on today's work. One brick, one decision, one completed commitment. And over time, those ordinary moments become extraordinary character. Not because you try to become someone different, but because you faithfully became more of the person your values have been pointing toward all along. That's how intentional lives are built. Not through dramatic breakthroughs, through quiet follow through, again and again and again. And remember, character is built every time you finish what your values started. Today's daily focus: choose one meaningful task that you've already begun. Complete it before starting something new. Let today's completion become another piece of evidence that you are becoming someone who follows through. Here's a memorable principle: character is built every time you finish what your values started.